Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Yoder. I'm the Director of Content at Rebrandly, and I'm going to be moderating this discussion today. So, for what this session is, we're going to have a discussion with two go-to-market experts, Vanessa Goolsby and Jeremy Lamonde. Hopefully, I said that right. They'll talk about everything their vast experience has taught them about AI in go-to-market. So if you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box and we can discuss as we go, but we'll also have some time at the end for questions. And because everybody always asks, we are recording, and we will send you this recording in a follow-up email, so no worries about that. First, I just want to give you the 30-second elevator pitch for Rebrandly, which is hosting this webinar today. So Rebrandly is a link intelligence platform. We let you shorten and brand your links to build trust and to increase click-through rates. We also provide AI-enhanced link suggestions, comprehensive analytics, and a lot of really helpful features like you can edit your links post-publication if you're sending people to the wrong place, and you can do destination routing. So you can send people to different places based on their destination, or sorry, based on their location with the same exact link. And very soon, we will also be providing conversion tracking. So you can see exactly what happens after someone clicks your link. So if any of that is interesting to you, head on over to our website to learn more. So I'm going to start us off by handing things over to Vanessa.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. And thanks for having me. So I thought I'd start with just why Rebrandly would invite someone like me to kick off this conversation with Jeremy and the tech stack at Rebrandly. I am a go-to-market growth advisor and author. I've been an advisor of PE-backed software companies for about 7 years. And after working with over 100 software companies, I was lucky enough to do this during sort of the adoption curve, the release of ChatGPT. So I've been kind of front and center with a number of teams as they're trying to work their way through adoption, all through the different phases of like the evolution of AI, which is we'll talk a little bit about later. And Stephanie, we can go to the next slide. And my engagements tend to start with some kind of trigger point. So I'm generally called in, maybe an investment has gone through. And so now the team has a lot of money to reinvest into their go-to-market structure. They might have acquired a new company and now we want to integrate the go-to-market teams on the back end. Or they might have hit a ceiling in their growth phases and they just kind of need a new way to like think through how to burst through that ceiling. And in all of these kinds of cases, we ultimately come to the point where we need to think about tooling, right? We go through the people, we go through the process, we go through the tech. And that's a sequence, right? It's not just like a cool saying. And so when we get to the tech, it used to be before, oh, we can stay back on that other slide,
Sorry,
Stephanie.
sorry
Thank you.
about that.
That's okay. And it used to be before ChatGPT launched about 3 years ago. You can go back one more slide. Yeah.
Oh,
Let's go to the,
there we
yeah,
go.
we can just stay right there. Yeah, that's great. And it used to be before ChatGPT launched, that was a pretty straightforward approach, right? We would talk about the tooling as it related to the process that we were putting in place and how we could scale that. But once ChatGPT launched, we ended up finding ourselves in a world that was becoming noisier and noisier as more tools were coming online. Stanford University did a study last year, and they found that there were 25,000 new AI startups just in 2025 alone. And so when you have that much noise and that much opportunity and that much promise in front of you, it can become very difficult for teams to know how to move forward and navigate while mitigating risk as a group, right? So we want to think about this in terms of becoming an AI first team is kind of a change management conversation. It's how do we build that like AI first culture to ensure that what we decide as a group is going to anchor us on the outcomes we want to achieve versus the activities we want to do, right? And so when I'm working with teams, which is a little different than before AI really came into our lives, now, when I work with teams, we ultimately end up finding ourselves at this point where we need to think about who do we want to be as an AI first team. And I tend to start them off thinking about it in terms of tenets. Like, what would be the 3 to 5 sort of anchors, the principles that we'd want all of the team members to kind of sign up for and commit to make sure that the decisions they're making on their own are still going to feed into the decisions of the group. So these four that I'm going to walk us through now are the ones I typically start with teams, knowing that they're going to refine this, change it, and make it their own, right? But these are good starting places to think about. The first tenet is we don't chase tools. I mean, the truth is nobody really cares. No one on your board really cares whether or not you're using AI. They're going to tell you that they care, but really what you're going to be measured on at the end of the day is not your usage rate of your AI tools. It's going to be the outcomes you're producing with those. Were you more efficient? Were you more effective? Did you hit your growth rate? And so you also need to stay very anchored in terms of why you're here today. You're not here to play with AI. You're here to create some kind of outcome. So we don't chase tools as the tenet. And the way that we see that play out in practice is rather than chasing a cool new, like Clay came out and all of the teams I was working with was like, we need to adopt Clay. I was like, hold on a second. Is the use case that Clay solves for, is that actually a pain you're trying to solve for today? Is that a priority on your roadmap as a go-to-market team? So we actually start with solving the pain. What is the gap to achieving your outcome that you need to work on this year? And that is going to be, that's what we call the use case. You'll hear that term a lot when you read articles or you see things online around this idea of AI adoption. That idea of a use case is just relating back to like whatever that pain that you're trying to solve for, what does that look like? What is that actual gap that we're trying to close? Once you have a sense of that pain, you're ready to start thinking, you're actually able now to start to shortlist the tools that would help you close that gap, right? And we always recommend start with what you have first, especially when it comes to AI. And that is because so many 25,000 tools, right, available to us. The promise of AI is out there. There's so much competition now. And that competition has actually forced a lot of the flagship players in our space to aggressively build out their roadmaps to support more and more AI features and functionality. And so it's like what's happening is you may have purchased HubSpot years ago to be your marketing automation platform, but now it can do website conversions, now it can do chat, now it can do so many more things that are AI enhanced because they're having to keep up now with all of these sort of ankle biter incoming players that are competing for their audience. And so we start with the pain and then we start to talk to, this is when I tell teams, this is when you should just meet with your account managers at your big tools, like whoever you're using today the most, like whatever fits most closely in your function and space, meet with that account manager. You'll be surprised at how many new features and functionality have rolled out in that tool over the course. They're rolling it out like every month at this point, sometimes every week, especially Salesforce, HubSpot, Outreach, Gong. These are players that have just, they're almost changing what they're bringing to their core capability is with this new approach to their roadmaps. So we've identified our pain, we understand the tools, and now we want to think about how we're going to actually roll this out. And what I recommend is, when you roll out a tool, especially across a function or across multiple functions, like maybe it's going to touch sales and marketing or marketing and customer success. When you're rolling a tool out, we always want to create for ourselves a pilot phase first. This is a smaller environment rollout where you can control the outcome. So you want to think to yourself, my pain was I needed to improve the conversion rate on my website, what will my pilot produce for me? I want to get a 10% lift in 6 weeks. Like you're just going to set yourself some kind of guardrail that you can work against. And then you need to engage with that tool and engage with that implementation process to ensure that your tool is set up to provide that lift for you. It's very rare that I talk to teams and I hear, oh, it was a home run right out of the gate. Like, no, there's going to be a back and forth where you are going to have to, create the environment like garbage in, garbage out, all of that. You're going to have to adjust, right, what you're doing in order to meet the AI tool and supply it what it needs in order to be effective. And that's how we create outcomes, right? So we're not here to play with tools. We're here to generate outcomes. We identify the pain, we shortlist the tool, and we pilot to our first outcome. Once you have a sense of that outcome, then it's much easier to champion it across the functions and your adoption is naturally going to be better because you have a story to tell. I achieved a 10% lift in my conversion rate and you can too, and we already have the tool and let me show you how. It's much more powerful than just saying, hey, we just adopted this tool, now go run it, right? And then last but certainly not least, if you're on a go-to-market team, every tool decision you make is going to be suffered by our buyer. Like that poor buyer is going to have to, it's going to affect their journey in one way, shape, form, or another. And the example I like to give here is a pretty common one I see with teams where a marketing team has some form of AI that's writing their emails. And then a sales team has some sort of form of AI that's writing their emails. And customer success has theirs and product has theirs. And so how many M dashes are we putting in front of this buyer, right? Like how seamless is that buyer journey? And at the end of the day, if we are so disconnected in how we're communicating and nurturing and bringing value to the client, that's going to materially impact our renewal, our churn, and the satisfaction rate on the back of that customer. So we just really want to be cognizant that the decisions we make, and this is not the same for every team. This is unique to go-to-market teams. Every decision we make as it comes to tools is going to affect the buyer's journey to some degree. So we just need to be cognizant of that. Okay, now I'm ready, Stephanie, for the next slide. So I have one last slide, and then we'll go deeper in terms of how Rebrandly is running this play in practice. But I thought we'd stay just a little high level and share with you a little bit of what I've seen over the course of this release of AI over the past 3 years. You can look at this adoption curve. You can bisect this adoption curve down the middle. So on the left-hand side, when we were starting, right, decision making was still being left to the humans. So humans are making the decisions, and we were really finding AI tools to supplement us, to make us more efficient, to support our decisions, to help us make us more effective. As we crest the center and we get to the right, what we're going to find is AI will be taking more of that decision-making role, and we will be kind of operators behind the scenes on what the AI can do. And the little star is missing, but I will voice it over. So today, we are starting to crest into integrated workflows with this launch of Claude. We're starting to get to this place where we're switching. We're not quite there yet, but we're starting to get to a place where we're switching from that human-led decision more into that AI-led decision, just with this release in February of Claude. And it's funny because there was a star on this slide. And first I sent it to Stephanie, and the star was in Point Solutions to say, "You are here." And I was like, oh no, that's a February talk track. Claude released. Now the star has moved, right? Now the star is moving so fast, it's off the slide. But let me walk us through where we've been and the direction we're heading. And it will be interesting as you hear me talk through these phases. Think about your own experience in adopting AI. And I'd be curious to hear, does this mirror what you saw with your teams as you guys were taking on AI for the first time? So in the beginning, when I was working with teams and ChatGPT launched, they were receiving a lot of pressure from their CEOs, from their investors, from their CROs about adopt AI. Like we need to get more efficient, more efficient, more efficient, right? And what I would find is then when I would dig in with the teams, I was getting a lot of resistance. Teams did not want to mess with AI. They saw it as a threat to their job. And it's also a pain in the butt to like think about having to try a whole new process. Like I've been doing this for 30 years on Excel. Like why would I go now have to go learn a completely new way of doing things? And this, I would say we were in this stage. I was experiencing this stage for over a year. So it was like a lot of like investors would call me in to like talk about like FOMO, like trying to inspire teams to just even play with AI. But what happened, a very interesting milestone happened in that Google finally released their AEO, their AI overviews, that experience where you are still like going into Google, doing your normal Google thing, searching for something. And Google's like, hold on, before I give you that organic search result, let me give you my AI overview, right? That experience kind of forced people to get more comfortable with AI. And as more teams were getting comfortable with AI, they were then ready to start to adopt AI tools that were very specific. And so they're going through their tenants, whether they were tenants or not, but they're going through and they're thinking, I have a pain. Like, I want to see a conversion rate lift on my website. And AI is pretty cool right now. I'm kind of digging what I'm experiencing. I'm going to go find myself a tool. And so then we lived in this world of point solutions. And we were probably in this world of point solutions up until February of this year. So I would say this is like 2024, 2025, definitely, right? We were in this point solutions. And this is where teams I was working with They had their regular tech stack, and then they would get 6sense. They had their regular tech stack, and then they'd get Jasper to help them write marketing content, or they'd get Gong for call listening. And so they would have these very like isolated, siloed AI motions that they were running within like an overall broader go-to-market process. And as we start to mature, like the next step in that evolution is truly is integrating all of these siloed AI environments into almost like a domino effect where we can create some logic behind the tools to say, when this happens, then this other thing's going to happen, then this other thing's going to happen, and so on and so forth down. And we call that integrated workflows. And this integrated workflows, as I mentioned, like it's just so funny to me, like how fast this is all moving. Like I gave this talk in January and we were clearly still in point solutions. Now that Claude is launched, it's like, oh no, I think we're here now. I think we're now like we're into integrated workflows. And what this means for us is the ability to start to have the LLMs become smarter beyond just their initial siloed place. So this idea again of like a trigger point that is happening and creating an entire process that AI is leading and optimizing. And now we're starting to take a backseat around how we, using this, like managing it like a tool, like at the controls. My guess is we'll probably be in this integrated workflows space through the rest of this year at least. And then into next year, we'll start to see some standardization as more people. I keep using Claude as the example because it's honestly probably the most tangible example that we have today of like a one place where you can go in co-work and set up rules and then uh, that AI is going to do a number of different actions on your behalf. That's a very straightforward play. Another way that go-to-market teams have been playing in this space, but I wouldn't say is standardized yet, which is having your silo tech stack connected through an orchestration tool like a Zapier. You may have heard that term before, where you are then informing the logic and you're saying, if 6sense sends this, then Salesforce is going to do that and Outreach is going to do that. And so now you're forcing that AI sort of domino approach, but it's still like you're still kind of you're manually forcing that to happen. What we expect to see is that that manual intervention will be removed, and these tools and platforms will start to do this naturally through their APIs, or some other cool widget that I don't know yet. As we move, as this becomes more mature and more teams are adopting this, and the tools, the roadmaps are built out to support this at scale, we'll start to see this become like the standardized way. I think this is pretty clearly the direction we're heading. And then finally, it'll become a commodity, right? Like right now, AI is still promoted as like, hey, and we have AI, right? Like we're going to move to a place where it's just kind of parity, where everyone's going to have AI. And I see that already with the investors I work with, where it's like table stakes to even get an investment now. You kind of have to have AI at least somewhere in your roadmap in order to be competitive in this market. 25,000 tools, right? Just released in 2025 alone. So there's a lot there. So that's very conceptual. It's very high level, but now I think it'd be great to like bring us down. I'll hand this over to Jeremy so that he can bring us down and like see what this is starting to look like in practice at Rebrandly.
Thanks, Vanessa. That curve, by the way, feels real. I feel like I've been in not all those phases, but I feel like I'm kind of like moving. We're like moving into the right, kind of going back into the left, kind of like like switching a little bit. But that really feels like real to us. But yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Jeremy Lamonde, the CEO of RevOps AI. We're like a fractional RevOps shop to help companies like Rebrandly and many others. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. So today I will talk kind of briefly around our approach, which is very similar to kind of like what Vanessa outlined earlier around kind of like the framework that we use, and then I'll talk about how we use that in practice from our go-to-market strategies, especially on the inbound and outbound side. Um, but yeah, so a lot of the things that we've seen, especially like coming into a new project, is that, as mentioned earlier, like everyone wants to use AI, and we patch AI into like existing tech stack, and that is usually not a very good solution because the results are like kind of like mixed, right? It's just like sometimes it's not working at all, sometimes it's good, but it's never really good. right? Because the data is very messy. And so not having really good data when you layer AI is going to be very difficult because AI as an LLM just works based on like historical data and what is available into your CRM. So if this is not clean, just don't expect AI to kind of change the game for you. And also the use of AI across the company, right? Like if you think about the go-to-market strategies, if you give like sellers like AEs or SDRs like access to AI, this can be very tricky as well because everyone's going to have kind of like their own way of doing it. And so, looking back, it's going to be very difficult to have any visibility around like any insights. So that's kind of like what we've seen a lot still today is like how people are kind of like using it. Uh, One approach that we like to do is uh, kind of like what Vanessa said earlier is like AI is kind of like the shiny object. Like we need to get it, but first you need to really build the right infrastructure, right? Like simplify your tech stack, making sure the data is clean, and then yeah, cloud is very hot right now. We've been leveraging it a lot, and I mean things are changing so rapidly, to be honest. Like it, we've done this for a long time across a lot of companies, and now the ability to use cloud to almost control all of the workflows or actions into your CRM is scary good at the same time. Just earlier today, I was able to kind of like use Claude and be like, "Can you backfill all of those things?" And I said, "Sure." And then you put a script, and then it run it, and everything was clean. I was like, I just couldn't believe it. Right? It took 2 minutes to do this. Versus kind of like having the mental math around like which ones are not being backfilled and which sellers needs to kind of like have the right data and as everything was clean. So very impressive. I think we're just like early on. But yeah, like I've mentioned, like simplifying your tech stack is also very important. Like the more tools you add, the more complexity you'll have into not just AI, but just like understanding like your full funnel. So let's talk about the go-to-market strategy on the next slide. We'll start with the inbound inbound strategy. So few things to note there. When you think about go-to-market strategies, there's like kind of like the inbound, outbound, and partnership. Today I'll be focusing on like inbound and outbound because those are like the kind of like the known uh strategies. And um maybe to take a step back around inbound and kind of like how the process has evolved over the years, right? It used to be very difficult to kind of like have the right form and making sure that you had like the right user experience that come with it, right? It used to be like, I have the form, I have all of those fields on the form. I'm trying to grab as much information that I can from this person, and then they will send press, and then they will receive an email maybe like 5, 10, 15 minutes later, depending on like the workflow that I have in the back end. And this was not a very good user experience, right? So like how do you automate, how do you bring kind of like uh better experience to this person? So now most forms can actually like bring like a meeting scheduler. So I know this is not AI, but if you don't use that today, please use it. Like every single form being submitted should have a bidding scheduler based on your logic, right? There's maybe some logic on the form that you may not want to prompt the candidate to show up, but if it matches the logic, you should 100% do this. It's going to improve your conversion. So please trust me on that. And the second piece is like, how do you optimize the fields, right? Like there might be some fields that you don't need, right? If they give you a domain, you may not need the company name. You may not need their industry. You may not need the employee size. All of this can be enriched. And I think the reason why I'm mentioning this is that similar to kind of like where we used to be a couple of years ago with the kind of like the Zoom info of the world where you could just like enrich some of that information. It used to be very static, right? It was very limited to what you could do. Now there are really good tools like at Rebranding we use Clay. And yes, that was kind of like a shiny object that you guys have looked at in the past, but it worked out really well for us because we can customize the logic. So here's an example of like AI that you guys could use as well, where someone submit a form, it gets pushed automatically into Clay, and then from Clay we will have kind of like the LLM look into who is that person filling out the form and defining a buying role. Is this a decision maker? Is this a technical user? Is this like an economic buyer? Those are like very important information to know for UAEs. Also, what is the lead quality of that person? So usually the lead quality in most of the CRM is like very static, right? It's just based on the rules. uh, Nothing wrong with that. I think it does a decent job, but may as well use like an LLM based on the logic on who they are, what's their ICP, are they matching it based on your industry, based on the revenue and all of that. So that can actually provide like a much more accurate lead quality so the reps know the type of buying role and lead quality coming in. And the last piece on inbound is how do you prep or how do you help your reps get better at what they do, right? So before any meetings, reps should prep for it. But what if you had a tool that could actually like summarize the company and the industry and all the talking points based on the prospect buying role? Because now we know what the buying role is. We know kind of like where they are in the kind of like in the sales process. So we can actually also like surface like relevant use case. So all of this can be automated, right? I think that's the beauty of it. I think there's also kind of like the um and Vanessa, you touch a little bit on this as well around kind of like the AI native versus kind of like the what I call like enhanced workflow. And I think for a while, like a lot of companies were kind of like mixed around like, oh, I've built an agent, but it's not really an agent. It's just like a better workflow, right? That use a little bit of like, LLM. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like I have no issues with that. Like to me, this is actually an enhanced workflow for me today is still superior as what I've seen from a fully kind of like native AI agent because you can control every single step and it runs really well until like LLM becomes so good, right? Kind of going back to like Vanessa's chart when you go on the right side, where it's like you may not need the workflow anymore. The LLM will kind of like be able to build it, but enhance AI workflow, I'm in big favor. So let's move to the outbound journey. And so I have a couple of slides to close this out, but also kind of like good to know where we were and kind of like where we're heading, right? Like the shift in outbound has been massive, right? And for good reasons, right? Like it used to be like 4 or 5 years ago, like if you had sales off on outreach, you were doing great. You could just like load a bunch of contacts into a sequence based on your like account name, right? Like the tier two or tier three. Hopefully, folks didn't reach out to the tier one, but maybe they have done this. And without very a customized sequence, reach out and have around 2 to 5% of meeting booked. That's what we used to have. It was amazing. Like we used to have like a Calendly meeting booked in there and see all of this meeting being booked. And it was beautiful. And that's kind of like how we hired a ton of like BDR and SDRs and so on. And that world has changed because now those emails are not hitting the inbox anymore, right? Like the Gmail and the Yahoo, like they've created those roles where it's, if you're not set up properly, it's just not gonna hit the inbox. So that's all it's gonna go to spam. So how do you prevent that, right? So now at Rebrandly, we use kind of like Signal plus AI to do this. So we do less volume in general, but like more customized, right? To the kind of like what we've mentioned here, to the right person, the right time. And we'll talk about the type of motions around the right time because there is kind of like the warm outbound that is for the user base that we have versus the warm outbound based on like account-based marketing strategy. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so on the outbound, today we use Common Room. It's an early kind of like early adoption here for us earlier this year. So we're still like kind of like tweaking a ton of the logic. We're recently starting to see kind of like good momentum around what it can do, but also going back to what was said earlier, um, being able to understand the tool fully without like layering new tools is something that I will also like highly recommend, right? Because HubSpot is a great example, right? Like now they can do so many different things, right? Like from not just the sales, but also kind of like be able to sequence and like the form now is like really kind of like best in class. Command Room is also like having some really good features. And one of those, so Common Room essentially like is able to kind of like look into like website visitors and being able to kind of enrich who they are through their like email address and if they match our ICP based on our kind of like the logic that we've embedded. And so based on that, you're able to kind of create a filter so you don't reach out to everybody. You just reach out to the folks that makes the most sense for you, right? So ICP is a big piece, right? But how long did they spend on the website? Did they go into the pricing page? Those are quite important, right? But then also like the speed at what point you reach out to them is also quite important, right? Because they may have come to the website, didn't get to what they really wanted, and didn't fill out a demo or like a enterprise form, and then we missed out on them, and then they moved on very quickly, right? But what if you were able to kind of like reach out to them like 10, 15 minutes with a very tailored approach, right? So Common Room has some really nice AI features that we're leveraging right now, so that can really feel personalized based on who they are, because we're like enriching all of those and who and the value of Rebrandly. So we can actually match these two and be very customized into our approach. So we've seen some success doing this. The other piece on the outbound is less around like website visitors, but more around like our like own user base, right? Like that's something that you know I've run so many plays on what we call like product qualified leads or like PQL, but just being able to like layer signals is so important, right? So you could like push out like your user base into Command Room and try to figure out like, did they come to the website? 'Cause that could be very helpful to know. What's their ICP just in general, or like the product usage, right? So like you can have, Rebrandly is big on like number of links or like the number of workspace or the kind of like the seat count. Some of those things are quite important to us, right? So you can actually like add all of those kind of criteria to build different segments, which segments can build different sequencing with different messaging, right? So like the more and more you dive into this and the more you become more specific to their need and what they need. So that's kind of like where we are right now. We've been building a lot of those, and the beauty of those kind of like those tech stack is they can really run on their own, right? So that's kind of like also like a big advantage around like kind of like putting the effort to build the segment. It's by the way, it's not that easy to bring your user base into Common Room or any. It takes work, right? Like, it takes time to work with the data team, build it kind of like from like the data warehouse in a table, and then kind of like sync with the platform on a daily basis. But when it's all piped in, then it becomes really easy, right? Like when you have again, if when you have good data coming from the again data warehouse from the product being pushed into a platform like Common Room, then you can do a lot of different things. So that's kind of like the second play that we have. And the third one, which is not something that we do a lot because I've talked about a little bit earlier, is kind of like more on the kind of like the scale and a little bit colder outbound, which is based on like our like named accounts, like so maybe like the tier two, tier three. But just kind of like a few thoughts on that, so everyone can um, like be aware of some of those things, right? Is just to be very careful around your domain health risk. So the mass volume used to be something that you push into outreach or sales loft, and you just like kind of like close your eyes and you hope things work. If you do that today, you're gonna hurt your domain health very fast, and that's actually a really bad thing because now when marketing try to send the email, they're not gonna hit the inbox, right? So having to redo your domain, it can be very, very painful. There's like new tech stack, there's like new tools out there, like the Instantly of the world, that allows you to warm up inboxes quite fast in within the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's pretty scalable, so that's definitely something that I will highly recommend. when you may not have common room, right? You may not have the signal base, but you want to kind of reach out to more folks. Just build the right infrastructure, warm up the domains, pay attention to their score. And when the becomes like lower, you may have to warm up another domain, which is a bit repetitive and not as scalable as it used to be. But that's also like the new world that we're in. And the last piece on that scaled outbound is make sure you multi-thread. And multi-thread is not just on the signal based or just the scale. It's actually across like all of the outbound motion, right? How do you reach out to them on LinkedIn, right? How do you make sure you like layer calls, email sequence, like all of those things should take place. If you really want to kind of like have the best conversions and the more engagement, you need to layer multi-threading as part of your outbound play. So that's kind of like how we use the kind of like AI today on the kind of like the RevOps tech stack here at Rebrandly.
Great. Thank you both. That was super illuminating. We have a few minutes left for Q&A, so if anyone has a question, feel free to pop it in the box. But I will start. I have a question. So both of you kind of touched on this idea of shiny object syndrome. So my question for you is, how do you evaluate if a tool is worth the expense of adding it to your tech stack, both initially and then over time, if it's actually worth the expense to keep paying for it?
Yeah, I could start and I'll give you kind of like my 2 cents based on this. I think generally speaking, we try to not get locked in, pay a little premium. I think that's kind of like it used to be like very like, like signing a multi-year contract. Again, like a few years ago, now it's kind of like don't get locked in because like we've mentioned, maybe like who knows, maybe co-work is going to be the next big shiny object, right? And you may not want to use cloud anymore or some other like some other tools, but even there's some very cool tool that we're using today that we're monthly, right? Because we're always evaluating the ROI on this. And also kind of like it's hard because you don't want to move too fast to the next one. But after a couple of months, you should have a good sense around like, is this working or not working? Right? Because again, it used to take forever to set anything. Like it used to be very, very hard from a RevOps perspective. Now you have like, cloud that you can just like do MCP and connect with like 10 different tools within like 30 minutes. That's like, I mean, it's like it's amazing, right? So you can test much faster at a much lower cost. And I think that ability to be able to be in the weed in testing and to have kind of like bring that ROI back into kind of like the exec level will allow you to be like, is this the right tool for us or not? I don't know, Vanessa, have you experienced something different?
Well, I was just thinking we're such good complementary co-hosts because that was exactly the right like tactical operator answer. That makes perfect sense. And I think about it one step higher level because I'm working generally across multiple teams. And so this is where really like the company priorities for the year actually take the lead. So a lot of people on the teams are going to have projects, passions, gaps, that like pain points that they want to solve. But we've only got so many budgeted dollars, right, to allocate to tools this year at a group level. And so, what I tend to teach with teams is let's start with the company priorities. Like, what are the one, two, five, no more than five things, right, that the company has to achieve? And in those, what then is the biggest priority for the marketing team, for the sales team, for the RevOps team, for the customer success team, right? And once you can like anchor onto a priority, it becomes the horse trading becomes a lot easier because you kind of depersonalize a little bit of like the passion and you're remembering that we're all kind of moving in one direction as a group together. And then once you identify that element, like, yes, maybe you're like conversion rate on the website is the biggest gap. Like, we're never going to be able to hit our pipeline target if we can't convert the leads. Then, right, what Jeremy's saying is like kicks right in, right? Which is like, of the tools now, how do we ensure that we're putting the right one in motion?
Love that. I have another question on adoption and making sure that everyone on the team is on the same page. This might be more for you, Vanessa, but how do you align your marketing teams, your RevOps teams, and make sure that they are actually using the tools and using them correctly?
I mean, this is a tale as old as time, right? So, with AI, what I have found to be really successful has been to create like an AI council. So, if you want to become like AI first, if your CEO is like, you got to use the tools and they're getting pressure from their investor, like everyone's got to start using AI. We want to see AI in the board decks. At that point, that's a good trigger to say we need a cross-functional steering committee to ensure that the decisions we're making, we're allocating the budget in the right places, and we're bringing in that adoption. And this like council idea is such a fun play, frankly, for those people on your team who maybe never really get the opportunity to like join a board call or have a strategic opinion. This is where the champions on the team who have a natural inclination to wanting to adopt, wanting to try, wanting to innovate. This is a great place to bring them in and have them be a voice because that enthusiasm creates for yourself. You create there like a culture carrier motion, right? So that's such a big element to change management. So one half of that I would say is you need your teams to align strategically first. So the council is a way to do that. You may have other ways that the team that your organization is already structured to support that, but like there needs to be like one place where everyone who's leading the strategy can come together and say, it's this tool, not that tool. It's this launch, not that launch. Like somebody needs to like drive it, right? Then you'll have a layer of these culture carriers who are naturally inclined to like be enthusiastic and excited and want to try. And then a lot of the tenants we talked about are naturally supporting this motion of adoption. The first is the pilot. So the pilot does two things for you. One, it ensures that the tool is set up correctly before you release it too widely. It ensures that you are generating outcomes and not just ticking the box and using a tool. But maybe secretly most important for adoption is it gives you a really compelling story to sell to the rest of the people who are going to need to adopt it. Nobody wants to adopt a tool, but everybody wants more leads. They want better leads. They want whatever the thing is, right? That's going to benefit them. And that pilot gives them like some credibility and saying like this is going to be worth your while. So those are some of the tricks, but they do kind of all work together. There's no like really one area that I found is like it's B, go for B.
No, but I love that. I think that putting the emphasis on the outcomes versus just you have to use this tool because we said so is
Yeah.
pretty effective.
Yeah.
All
When you
right.
when you anchor on the outcomes, it becomes more there's a lot of clarity then in terms of like what the direction is that you need to walk in.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you both. We are at time, so I'm going to call it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As I mentioned, we will send out the recording in the next few days. And good luck and have fun experimenting with AI.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you for having us.